I remember the first time I ever stepped into the ocean. My brothers jumped in, my mom jumped in, and I just stayed away from the waves. And I remember my dad pretending to drown, and he was like, "Who's gonna help me? Who's gonna help me? Only my little girl can help me." He had the ability to empower me to think that my 6-year-old body could lift a whole man. The world has really lost the best kind of people on that flight.
My colleague with communications, John Flick, is with some of the employees that have come, and certainly there are a lot here in Renton, Washington, but we have employees who've been involved with this airplane and program from all over the globe. John?
Yeah, certainly it is a worldwide effort, and you know, not the greatest day. It's rainy, it's cold, but look at all the excited faces. A lot of these folks from Renton here, ponchos, smiling even though it's raining, and we talked about the team effort for this.
Let's just take a listen as this airplane gets ready for its very first takeoff.
Throughout the past 100 years, Boeing and its employees have led with innovation and have taken the world from seaplanes to space planes. From walking on the Earth to walking on the Moon. Few companies have achieved as much as we have. Today, we'll celebrate that legacy together while imagining what comes next.
One Dow stock is skyrocketing, and it's a familiar one.
Shares of Boeing stock is on pace for its best month ever.
I'm speaking to you from the Boeing plant in Everett, Washington. Because of this plant, they're building the plane of the future.
We are the leader in this great global industry, and we know that lives literally depend on what we do. We will continue to lead and succeed in our second century.
I believe in the Boeing mission. I'm awed by their technology and their prowess. I love it. And it's a hugely important company, and I want it to succeed. This is the piece that we wrote that blew open the story behind the 737 MAX disasters.
I remember somebody called me up and said, "Why didn't you publish that earlier? Maybe you could have stopped the second crash."
An Indonesia passenger plane crashing into the sea minutes after takeoff from Jakarta. All 189 people on board are now feared dead. You mentioned this was a Boeing aircraft. What more do we know about the plane?
Boeing, as you said, almost brand new. They had taken delivery of it back in August. It was a 737 MAX. That's the updated version of the 737. They haven't been out that long.
The stock is down, but my read is that the street actually isn't that negative on where Boeing is going with this issue.
Analysts have great expectations for their stock. The company said the crash should pose no material risk to the MAX program. The company has enough cash flow to cover this, and that this issue, again, is overblown.
First of all, I think it's important that we all express our sympathies for the loss of Lion Air Flight 610. We've been very engaged with the investigative authorities throughout and providing all of the information necessary to make sure we do a full assessment of the situation. And the bottom line here is the 737 MAX is safe.
We are following breaking news out of Ethiopia, where a plane went down, killing everyone on board.
The airline told state media there were people of more than 30 nationalities among the dead.
It's unclear what caused the crash, but the model in question, a Boeing 737 MAX 8, it's the same one that was involved in the Indonesian disaster back in October.
This has now moved into a criminal probe. The Justice Department issuing multiple subpoenas as part of a wide-ranging investigation into Boeing's FAA certification.
Facing serious safety questions and brutal political headwinds, the Boeing 737 MAX 8 is being grounded around the globe.
Boeing 737 MAX постоянно растет.
Any plane currently in the air will go to its destination and thereafter be grounded.
Is this expected to send shockwaves through the U.S. economy?
Certainly could. You're talking about tens of thousands of supply chain workers. That's in addition to the 12,000 Boeing employees who build the 737.
It's a big decision. It's also one of our largest exporters, one of the truly great companies of the world. They have to figure it out fast.
These were two brand new airplanes that crashed, and the weather was perfect. That just shouldn't happen. Why did they crash? Was there a common cause? Were the pilots somehow at fault? Or was there something wrong with the plane?
I'm smart. I'm intelligent. I'm kind. I'm funny. I'm beautiful. Good girl.
They say you usually start your grieving process when you've buried your loved one. Then you get news that they've identified some remains, and finding out you're getting like 30% of the man who raised you. Some families got 70%, 80%. My brothers, my niece, and the rest of our family, we only got 30%. Going through the list of remains, viewing like what's in the casket, you know, it was hard to digest.
The families of some of the 157 people killed when a Boeing 737 MAX crashed in Ethiopia last March have accused Ethiopian Airlines of denying them the chance to attend a service for their loved ones at the site of the disaster.
Yesterday, the final unidentifiable remains of those who died were buried at the site.
2 days before the burial, they send the families an email saying we're going to be burying your loved ones in the next 48 hours. They were just buried like people who didn't belong to anyone or weren't loved by anyone. My dad had a funeral yesterday, and I missed it.
Do you believe that Boeing has been transparent enough in the process so far?
We may actually be in litigation against Boeing out of this case, so I don't want to throw stones at Boeing until we know more. Boeing's got the best aviation lawyers, trial lawyers. They've got unlimited resources. And the families of the victims essentially have us. I was a pilot in the Marine Corps. I've been in 2 aviation crashes. The first one was in a DC-9. It broke in half when it landed in Pensacola. The second one, the cross tube broke, the rotor blades hit the ground and flipped the helicopter. The accident I was in, nothing compared to the 2 MAX crashes. Those passengers didn't have a chance. So on the 6th, we had Kanji.
And then Lynette, she has 2 hours to meet with you.
There's 2 sides of the case, and they're both equally important. The first one is the liability case.
She may not come now, she's a little worried.
Yeah, I saw the emails. Basically, we have to prove that Boeing did something wrong in order to hold Boeing accountable.
She left behind a husband and 2 minor children, but they haven't given me a date yet.
The second thing is compensation. Even though life is precious and life can't be measured in terms of money, that is how the law measures it. Okay. And the compensation that we seek from Boeing has to reflect the very serious losses our clients have suffered. Boeing will try to put people on a spreadsheet. Have name, age, relatives. And then they might say, well, that's a single person, not survived by a spouse, no kids. That case isn't worth a lot of money. So one of the things we do is we kind of take them off that chart. Yeah, that person's not married. But did you know the person supported his entire family?
He completed all the 6 years training and then he became Africa Key instructor.
In this case, our client's a young man who, in the entire country of Ethiopia, he's the only person who can actually instruct master technicians on Toyota vehicles.
He wins a national contest in 2011, also in 2012. Everything here is a memory of Sentayi. Everything. My mother still expects every night to open the door for him, to say hi to him. She wakes up early to prepare food to him. It's difficult to accept the reality still.
You don't let people become numbers, you make them people again. So what we have to do is try to get the essence of the person.
This is when she was graduated from
Nice.
Yeah. As a cabin crew when she was joined.
This is the wings that they wore?
This is the wing for the crew members. Her intention was to run her own business.
Right.
Yeah.
And she was doing it in addition to raising kids, having a full-time flight attendant position.
Yeah.
She had a lot of energy, huh?
Yeah, this is originally which I found. My wife, she used to drink wine while she was having a spaghetti. So this is her last drink. This is her last drink. Nobody has touched it. We need justice. We need justice.
Could you just tell me what your full name is?
I am John Quindus.
Can I ask you about the crash and the loss of your wife, your daughter, and your 3 grandchildren?
It's a bit difficult to explain. Every day you wake up, and you find you have nowhere to go. It comes to your mind, my God, why did you do this?
We make them, put together photos for us. We make them fill out questionnaires for us. We put the people through pain. Can you just tell me what you miss the most about your mom? It's emotionally draining and making everything much worse. You could have a case where someone from the U.S. gets 10 times what someone from outside the U.S. gets. And this is something that we've been fighting for years. I'm so sorry. Oh, God, thank you for having us. One of the families said, you know what, if you bring me $1 billion and you say you can have this $1 billion or my brother back, I'm going to take my brother. So getting the money, is that justice?
I mean, I won't even begin to understand what they're going through. 1 minute, these people, they were with you, and then 20 minutes later, you're being told that there was a plane crash and they've all died. How do you make peace with that?
Folks coming in late, so I'll just have to find a seat. Hey, there's Dominic. You made it.
Of the 20 largest airlines in the world, 19 of them fly the 777. We talked about 10% better costs per seat than our closest competitor currently in the market today. We also have double-digit improvement in efficiency, so this allows them to reduce their costs. I'm happy to take some questions if you want. Yes?
Can we get an interview about Max?
We can work with you on any MAX-related questions. Wendy's really the marketing 777X person. I don't think she'd be in a position to answer any real complicated MAX questions, right?
Yeah, and I'm not an engineer, so.
And she's not an engineer. Okay, so we're going to proceed out of here, head out the door, head straight to the buses.
I always say to Boeing that it's better if you work with me. But if you don't, and you try to close me out, well, I'll write it without you. For 17 years now, I've been covering the story of Boeing.
Joining us now is Dominic Gates, an aerospace reporter for the Seattle Times.
Behind me here, we've got the 737 fuselage system installation. This was the most journalistically competitive story I've ever worked on. Sorry, everybody. Sorry I'm late. And so every meeting we were having,
you know that a lot of people are going to be reading it or not.
The editors were saying,
what's going on?
Whatever you got, you get it out there fast. There are 2 great centers of airplane building in the world. Toulouse in Europe for Airbus and Seattle for Boeing. Historically, you did pay a premium for a Boeing plane. And that's because it was better built. I don't think that's true anymore. I mean, it began with the McDonnell-Douglas merger in 1997.
The merger of Boeing and McDonnell-Douglas is now complete.
And in a sense, the MAX crashes are the end point of that. All these McDonnell-Douglas people came with this different mentality. They didn't want to design new planes and just harvested the money from these older models. The new management sold Wall Street this vision of Boeing growing exponentially, and Wall Street bought it.
But they were also under intense competitive pressure from Airbus.
Yeah, that's right. Airbus kept building new planes, and suddenly American Airlines was about to seal a huge order for 200 A320neos, which is the rival of the 737.
Is Boeing in trouble, do you think?
It tells us that the company is in some trouble in its competition with Airbus.
American Airlines was a legacy Boeing customer who only flew Boeing products up to that time. So the idea that they would lose market share to Airbus was a major event.
So what's Boeing going to do to answer Airbus?
They were going to design a whole new airplane and then scrap those plans and decided to modify the 737 in that race.
Right.
And the thinking for that was time, money?
Time. It's a lot easier to get a new version of an already certified aircraft certified by the FAA. But the primary goal was that Boeing wanted to produce the airplane so they could sell it to customers who were already flying the 737 and say, look, if an airline is looking at either buying an Airbus where they'd have to put pilots through training or buy the 737 MAX where they already have the pilots certified, that's a huge competitive advantage.
The biggest picture of all is really the expectations in a capitalist society, right? There's shareholders who want greater return all the time. There are flying passengers who want lower prices all the time. That's really what drives all of this.
Pull the curtain back and see what's really going on in this company, and you'll understand why this plane crashed.
Over here, this was not supposed to be a big parking lot for 737s, but that's what it's become right now where they're grounded. It's heartbreaking. The 737 factory is a huge facility. My team worked on the factory floor, and we started seeing a lot of quality issues. And that's when I was expressing my concerns to the general manager.
Problems started when senior executives were really trying to ramp up production of the MAX.
The plan is to build these planes in a very organized way because it's a complicated product and you have to do everything right. And because of this pressure, this continued pressure to produce, because of Airbus, we're not doing that.
We've seen a lot of narrow-body interest, so of course this week we'll be highlighting the MAX family.
Cameras captured a great week for Boeing in orders and commitments.
Singapore Airlines has committed to 30. United Airlines to 20.
The MAX was very successful. It's the fastest selling Boeing jet ever.
We get about 4,000 737s in backlog. We're oversold.
We were going from building 47 planes in a month to 52. That's a lot of airplanes.
Every 1.5 seconds, the 737 takes off somewhere in the world. Okay. So there goes another one. All right.
So we were trying to meet schedule, and it started slipping.
AerCap announced an order for 100 737 MAX 8s.
Well, it's looking pretty good. Looks like another record year.
Now we're having to do work out of sequence, which adds risk.
Take a look at shares of Boeing. Over the next 20 years, we see a need for about 41,000 new airplanes.
I'm about ready to move again, so I just moved my pad, and I have to keep pace, keep up.
I've never seen that kind of pressure put on people. And they start getting grilled. You know, I thought you gave me your word you were going to be done yesterday, and your team, how come you're not off the plane? And somebody would make this mistake, and then the same mistake will be made a day or two later. You don't want people thinking like that when they're building airplanes. I wrote a letter to the CEO saying, you know, we could still do the right thing, but we need to stop and give our people a chance to catch up. I wrote to the board of directors and I requested their assistance. And we'll get in touch with you, we'll get back to you, nothing.
We'll meet this demand, always raising the bar when it comes to safety, quality, and integrity.
I do know that, there might be people that will try to discredit me or maybe challenge what I say, and my response back is, look, I have to do it. I need to explain that even a wonderful, great company like Boeing can have problems.
There are many unfortunate circumstances involving whistleblowers. Edward Snowden, he now lives in Russia. Chelsea Manning ended up in prison.
It's been a long road to get here, huh?
Yeah, too long. Those are the names that you hear about, but there are many other whistleblowers trying to speak out to make a difference.
You doing okay, honey?
It's going up against Boeing, one of the biggest employers in the Seattle area. And there are some very well-documented examples of where Boeing has retaliated against people who have gone against the company.
Thank you, sir.
Down here. Down here.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, how are you, Cynthia?
Thank you for coming and doing this.
Thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Very good. So let's ask the documentary team to go.
The Wall Street Journal is the one who got the leak. Right. Someone leaked Ed's identity, and now the press are calling Boeing, and Boeing is preparing to say something. I can't answer questions like that ever on behalf of a client, whether the answer is yes or no. People want to protect Boeing's flank. They think it's in their interest to have Boeing get out there first before Ed's story is told. But of course, I know you don't want to do that. In order for that not to happen, looks like the stories will go today rather than tomorrow.
We're trying.
Never a dull moment.
After 30 years in the military, much of it spent in an airplane, Ed Pearson has a strong sense of duty. Bottom line is you're worried about people dying in Boeing planes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in late 2017, Ed Pearson says he started to see things that alarmed him. What words would you use to describe that factory at that point?
Dangerous, unnecessary, taking unnecessary risk, chaotic, disarray.
4 months later, a Lion Air 737 MAX crashed, killing all 189 people on board. What do you say to Americans who are planning to fly on a 737?
I would demand that the FAA, in their role as regulators, go in, thoroughly investigate that factory.
So, Cynthia, what is Boeing saying about all this?
Well, Lester, while the 737 MAX fleet are all grounded, there are more than 6,800 other 737s flying. Now, Boeing is pushing back strongly tonight, saying that the 737 is one of the safest planes flying. And they say, quote, the suggestion by Mr. Pearson of a link between his concerns and the recent MAX accidents is completely unfounded. And they say, so far, no investigators have found, quote, production conditions in the factory contributed to the accidents. Lester?
After the first crash, Boeing told us it was a one-off. The initial reports on the second crash sounded identical to what happened in the first crash, and that just set off alarm bells with me, saying, no, wait a minute, there's something we don't know here. And that was when we began the investigation. Almost like a court proceeding. First you go into discovery. You need the documents. And then once you get the documents, you identify key players who need to be interviewed.
Good morning. Good to be here with you this morning. Thank you. Looking forward to today's hearing.
They're going to ask you apparently about a manager who sought to halt the production of the 737 MAX today. Did you know about anything like that, and what would your response be when they bring that up?
Aware of that, and we've taken on those concerns and have addressed those. Thank you. Thank you.
I want to return to the market pressures, the fact that you had to design a plane that was more economical and couldn't require pilot training. I was taking on a very powerful corporation.
Mr. Chairman, we'll follow up with that information.
They were resistant.
Is anybody at Boeing taking a cut or working for free to try to rectify this problem?
My board will conduct a comprehensive review.
So you're saying you're not giving up any compensation at all? You're continuing to work and make $30 million a year?
But we're going to see through it the investigation. We think the system is going to work.
Boeing CEO Dennis Muhlenberg testifying before a Senate committee.
Boeing came to my office shortly after these crashes and said they were the result of pilot error. Those pilots never had a chance.
When we design a system, understand that these airplanes are flown in the hands of pilots. And in some cases, our system safety analysis includes not only the engineering design, but also the actions that pilots would take as part of a failure scenario.
Blame the dead pilots. I'm continually astonished that Boeing won't move from that. Especially once I started digging up information about the MAX's new flight control system, which is called the MCAS, the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. Hey, it's Dominic. Have you got a minute? The name of it is an awful acronym that tells you nothing. I find it astonishing that you don't know about it. All we knew early on was that MCAS was new flight control software that had been added to the MAX, and that some flaw in it had caused the crash.
There's a big question about how this airplane was designed. The history of this is freaking crazy. So the whole thing goes way back to like the 60s.
Newest arrival in the Boeing family of airliners, the 737 attracts a crowd.
They want a short jet. They want a jet that people can get onto and off of on a stairway. So they build the 737 low to the ground. So then, fast forward to 2011, they tacked on 2 new engines. The size of the engines meant they're going to be dragging on the ground. So they put them forward and up.
The new engines are so big that the air gets underneath and gives it an extra bit of lift. So software automatically counters that. The sensor feeds the flight control computer, and MCAS swivels the tail, pushing the jet's nose down. But the system was just too strong. Before the first crash, the pilot began a fight against the system that he didn't know about, pulling the nose up, and he did it 26 times. And the plane was going in a roller coaster ride. I actually talked to pilots, and they had a totally different story. Before the second crash, Boeing sent a senior vice president down to American Airlines to brief the pilot union. And that turned into a pretty rough meeting.
I wasn't going to stay in the meeting. It was the first time Boeing visited APA headquarters. When we saw the list of the Boeing personnel coming, the one thing that really jumped off the page was they were bringing their lawyer. So, I mean, who brings a lawyer to a safety meeting? I just sensed that they were not being direct or forthright. So anyway, I just thought it would be beneficial to record the meeting.
So I guess what I'll start with then is control law that is referred to in the press right now called MCAS. So it's just a little bit of software in the flight control system. Obviously, in the accident a couple of weeks ago, it's been reported that the system misbehaved.
I keep hearing those words, little bit, misbehave. It was like they were describing it as a child.
You know, 1 million miles are going to be flight this airplane, and maybe one's going to see this ever. So we try not to overload the crews with information that's unnecessary. And I don't know that understand this system would have changed the outcome of this.
They didn't come in and go, look, you've only got a handful of seconds to get this right. Okay, we didn't tell you about it, we're very sorry. But we want you to know going forward that if you react quickly and get on this, that it's manageable. They didn't. They were like, look, you know what to do.
Just minutes from now, lawmakers on Capitol Hill will hear from pilots who have criticized Boeing in the wake of these 2 deadly crashes.
I know Sully will be the movie star in the room, but really look for Dan Carey. He's the head of the Allied Pilots Association.
As pilots know, improvements in aviation are often, too often, written in the blood of the unfortunate victims of these airplane accidents. I got a subpoena from Congress, so I released the tape. I knew there would be some pretty heavy consequences.
This audio recording, more than anything else, has raised the specter of doubt about the company and this aircraft.
This is the first unscripted moment we have heard from Boeing.
It was important for me to get that tape out, and then I immediately turned it over to Chairman DeFazio.
There were many false warnings simultaneously.
Yes, a single fault, a single failure can now have cascading effects rapidly through multiple systems.
Do you think that better trained pilots should have been able to handle the malfunctions?
You have to remember, sir, and members of the panel, this is a sudden, violent, and terrifying event. This airplane's pitching up and down rapidly and violently. There's bells, warnings, and clackers sounding. Again, the failure was that they didn't ever tell us the system existed, so therefore, we did not have robust training.
I'd like first the family members who are on, that they could unmute themselves and introduce themselves so that the media knows who's on.
Suzanne Camp. I'm the mother of Mike Amisant.
I'm Mathieu Vilme. I've lost my sister.
Tom Kabau. We lost our younger brother.
My name is Paul Njoroge. I lost my wife and my 3 children and my mom-in-law in the crash of Ethiopian Airlines.
He was traveling to Kenya.
Nairobi would have been just a little stop, and she never arrived.
My name is Aporo Korea, and I lost my dad. Go up. Okay. Stop right there. Yeah, if we can edit this, if we just put for the first 6 minutes, the pilot struggled to control the 737 MAX 8 before it then crashed. I'm a bit younger than most of the family members, so we're all just kind of streamlining our different skill. I kind of know how to work social media and with a website. My favorite feature is the Our Stories page. We are a family, like we're the ET3OT family, whether we want to be part of it or not. In a way, it's like the shed blood.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It is an early start today. I am in Washington, D.C. on a layover. I'm heading to the United Nations Environment Assembly. I'll check in again. We don't know where I'll be, maybe Ethiopia, maybe my final destination, Kenya, but I'll keep you posted on the journey. Have a great day.
You can see the stories of like my dad, Joseph Kurio Waithaka, age 55, and you can see a little bit about him and who he was.
Hi guys, this is me and Olivia's diary of Don't Take Your Family to Your Gym. Dad, how many calories have you burnt now? 31. 31 only, and how long have you been doing it for? He doesn't like it. How long have you been doing it for?
I remember dreaming about my dad screaming for me, being sat next to him on the plane, but his section falling and me trying to reach out and grab him. I wonder how the people who are behind making the decisions go to sleep at night. I can count how many nights I go to sleep and just have clean sleep without imagining what was happening in those last 6 minutes of my dad's life. It's like seeing the ground coming towards you so close.
Tonight, a rare and stark admission of fault from the world's biggest airplane maker.
We at Boeing are sorry for the lives lost in the recent 737 MAX accidents.
The Boeing argument was, we've informed everybody how to handle it, and we're working on a software fix, which we will have very soon.
Boeing says MAX pilots can learn the new system in just 30 minutes.
That's just ridiculous.
We're taking a comprehensive, disciplined approach and taking the time to get the software update right. We're nearing completion and anticipate its certification and implementation on the 737 MAX fleet worldwide in the weeks ahead. We remain confident in the fundamental safety of the 737 MAX.
People think that the problem was only software, but Boeing is controlling the narrative. Look here, don't look here. It's easier for them to talk about pilot training because they can blame it on human mistakes, and it's software because we'll just make a software patch and we'll send it out, you know. But there's other issues, unanswered questions that are not being addressed. Why did the plane crash? It crashed because the pilots lost control. Why did the pilots lose control? Because MCAS software was pitching the plane down repeatedly. Why was that happening? Because the angle of attack sensor failed. But why does sensor fail? People think it's software, but it's actually hardware. It's a 3-pound physical part that's been installed on hundreds, if not thousands of planes.
The angle of attack is the angle basically between the wing and the incoming airflow. And the angle of attack sensor was giving a wrong signal. In fact, it was giving an impossible signal.
74.5 degrees nose up.
Isn't 74 degrees like beyond the pale of any normal?
You're right. An airplane can't fly at 74.5 degrees. You'd have to be a rocket ship.
So even though the plane was flying at a safe angle of attack, because of this bad sensor, the MCAS system thought it was higher up like that and was programming nose to go down.
If this was truly the angle of attack, they've got bigger problems. They got way bigger problems.
The MAX was not the only plane being built at the factory. Makes you wonder, are there other sensors out there that have the same defect? And so, if that's all they're gonna do, fix the software and the pilot training, then I think the flying public needs to ask why.
Whistleblowers from inside Boeing stepping forward has always been my best source of information. Over the years, that's how I've learned what's really going wrong inside the company.
I'm for the little guy. I'm not for, obviously, for the large, powerful corporation. So, that I know has severe problems internally.
Jerry Eastman approached me in 2003, years before the MAX crashes, angry about how management was running the company into the ground, and about safety issues.
My boss had this meeting with me and told me not to do my job, to just stamp the paperwork off. Of course, I knew that was bogus.
He had access to documents he wasn't supposed to have access to, but he did. I mean, you're talking about the second biggest defense contractor in the United States with big cyber capabilities. And this machinist was logging in to the presentations of the CEO and giving them to me. I repeatedly told Jerry, look, be careful. He just completely ignored me.
Eastman worked for Boeing for 18 years. He was arrested at his desk. He's been charged with computer trespassing, and if convicted, he faces up to 4 years in prison.
Anybody who worked at Boeing who talked to me privately is breaking the company rules and is in serious trouble.
Gerald Eastman was in King County Court today for his arraignment, where he pleaded not guilty. He says Boeing was not taking his safety concerns seriously, and that is why he went public with what he found.
You know, I got together and said to my wife, I said, I have to go public, so regardless of the threat to me.
After he was arrested, he settled with Boeing, but he never worked in aerospace again. I didn't hear from him in a long time, and I wondered, what's going on? I was worried. Later, I learned from a friend of his that he had taken his own life.
Do you ever look back and say, I wish I would have just kept my mouth shut?
No. There's thousands of people like at Boeing that do that every day. And some of us have to step forward.
I'm anxious. We have friends and family that work or have worked at Boeing, and my dad worked at Boeing after he retired from the Navy as well, and we felt proud to be part of that. And so this is hard because you feel like you're squealing, and I know it's not. He's not. He's just trying to shed light on something that could be made better and safer. But I'm hoping that people will understand the reasons behind why he's doing this.
It would be different if you knew this was a one-off, this is it, this is the last time this would happen. But there's the angst and anticipation for another crash to happen. The first 6 minutes of every flight are extremely difficult. Not just for me, but for all the families. Every time there's turbulence, the first thought is this the end? Like, am I gonna die? But my dad would go anywhere for me. That's why I have to go. To make sure that the world knows planes are not as safe as we think they are.
Folks, we'd like to welcome all of you to Washington, D.C.
So glad you're here. Good to see you. We made it, guys. Yeah. We made it. We've met so many families from 35 different countries. We see the same pain in each other's eyes.
While all your lives moved on
for the last 6 months, our lives, the lives of the families of the victims, has not moved an inch.
Grief, loss, and pain are a universal language that everybody speaks.
Grief has been profound, and I feel best when I'm outdoors. My daughter was a conservationist, and I know that was her happy place.
And I think that the way that we can fight for their legacy is to make sure that no other families in the same position as we are.
The families, they're critical. Putting a face on these crashes. Since the plane was built here, since the plane was certified here, they knew that they had to focus on the United States government and on Boeing to fix this problem.
It was quite evident that things were rushed. In fact, they were continuing to make the airplanes after the second crash. That's the biggest slap in the face to every single family.
My mission out of this is to make sure that when people get on a flight, that they get off on the other side.
There's a lot of things swirling around in my head. I've been obsessed by it, and I didn't really intend to be. I don't consider myself.
That's the first time I've heard you say that.
Well, I know I've been obsessed with kind of because I want to, make sure it never happens again. So.
I still have nightmares, but fighting back has been a powerful motivator. I mean, we're finally getting it, but...
This is almost dead.
Yeah, I know. I'd like to think that the families know that there's people out there that are still trying to get to the truth.
Today, appearing before the House Transportation Committee is a Boeing whistleblower, Edward Pearson. Pearson says he thinks the production problems contributed to the MAX crashes.
We need answers. We need accountability, and we need someone to take responsibility.
The reporters will try to question you. They'll shout questions at you that'll be provocative. Don't respond to it.
That's why I really...
We're gonna do this right now?
Guys, if you could give him some space.
Just have a moment.
Yeah.
Why did the FAA not listen to its own report about it coming in?
My name is Ed Pearson. I would first like to provide my heartfelt condolences for all the families and friends who lost loved ones on Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. Your loss and grief are truly unimaginable. I believe production problems at the Renton factory may have contributed to these two tragic crashes. I formally warned Boeing leadership in writing on multiple occasions, specifically once before the Lion Air crash and again before the Ethiopian Airlines crash, about potential airplane risk. Those warnings were ignored. On June 9th, 2018, while the Lion Air airplane was being produced 4 months before it crashed, I wrote an email to the 737 general manager advising him to shut down the production line. When I mentioned that I've seen operations in the military shut down for lesser safety concerns, I will never forget his response, which was, "The military isn't a profit-making organization." Less than a month later, on March 10, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed, killing 157 people. The U.S. regulators' investigation of these crashes has been as disappointing as Boeing's insistence that it had no systemic quality or safety issues.
Thank you again for providing me this opportunity. I'm ready to answer your questions.
Okay, now recognize Representative Norton.
Would you favor the FAA going farther and doing an investigation of U.S. Boeing factories?
I fully support that. I was there for 3 years, and honestly, I never met an FAA employee in my 3 years. And I never actually remember any of my employees saying they talked to an FAA employee. Now, they may have been there, but they certainly weren't visible and present, and I really think that's necessary.
I'm going to suggest that following this hearing, it is going to be on us if we do not take the steps to systematically look at Boeing factories across the United States. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Federal Aviation Administration, they are tasked with the job of keeping the public safe and making sure that things that we certify to fly are going to fly and not crash.
Aviation's hard lessons and the hard work in response to those lessons have paved the way to creating a global aviation system with an enviable safety record. But we recognize that safety is a journey, not a destination, and we must build on the lessons learned, and we must never allow ourselves to become complacent. Thank you, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Mr. Dixon, do you know who Ed Pearson is?
I have not met him personally, but I know of him.
He's sitting right over there.
Okay.
I mean, are you aware that 4 months before the first crash, he brought these problems to Boeing's attention? You aware of that, gentlemen? 4 months.
I know that there were, that concerns were raised, yes.
That's right. And you know what they did? They sat on it until a second plane crashed. That's what happened. A bunch more people lost their lives. So my question to you is, will you investigate the production problems at the Renton facility?
I know that there's ongoing activity through our oversight.
Sir, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. Are we going to interview the production workers at the Renton facility? Is it going to be a real thing?
You have my commitment that we are looking into those problems, and we will continue to do so.
Will you commit, as we sit here today, that you will interview Mr. Pearson?
Absolutely.
Will you investigate the production problems at the Renton facility?
Yes.
The committee stands adjourned.
You're doing the right thing by making sure it gets fixed and know what the family gets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
You could give me some space. I'm happy to, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you, but I think it's had a long day. Nobody wants to fly in those planes. I was really amazed.
The FAA just got directed to go and investigate the factory. And yeah, this was a big win.
Story we are following tonight. Boeing has fired its CEO, Dennis Muhlenberg.
Muhlenberg have presided over one of the worst years in Boeing's history. 346 people died. Can you answer a few questions here?
How much did he walk away with? $62.2 million. It may sound like a lot, but he's not taking his 2019 bonus. With the new guy, the new CEO, David Calhoun, he will be making $1.4 million with the added benefit of making millions more in bonuses, including $7 million, just $7 million alone if he gets the max back in the air. And since we're talking...
There is no remorse in this for Boeing. Just financial targets. And I think for me, thinking about Muhlenberg and my dad, knowing there were two men born the same year, one is living a lavish lifestyle with millions of dollars, and the other paid for it with his blood.
So the FAA is under fire, and I think rightfully so, but it's crazy because the Boeing's main defense is that it can't be liable because the airplane is certified by the FAA.
Every plane that's ever crashed has been certified. Right. So that kind of answers the question. No, certification is not safety.
The FAA's position is that the certification standards should provide immunity to the manufacturer, but the FAA's position also is that manufacturers, their responsibility extends beyond just meeting the certification standards.
If the only pressure on your profit margin is legal liability, and if you remove the risk of legal liability because once it's certified, you're no longer going to be able to be sued by people who are killed or injured by your aircraft, there's no longer any motivation for the aircraft companies, for the designers, the manufacturers, to design anything safely. The only motivation is to design something that's certifiable.
It doesn't really make sense.
Then there's no safety for the flying public.
We gotta go. Yeah, we gotta go.
Okay.
All right, babe. I will call you when we can. Okay.
Good luck.
Love you.
Naively, I thought that he would do his bit at the hearing and then it would be over. And so, not the case. And it literally dawned on me that moment, like, oh my God, this is not the end of it. We're just, this is the tip of the iceberg, and that's exactly what it was.
Finally got the interview with the FAA. Now I'm going to tell them what was going on in the factory. I think that's it, that giant facility down there, I believe.
That's my source. See you later. This source approached me in 2007. At the time, I actually met with half a dozen FAA safety engineers. You know, I'm not taking my usual car because some sources that I've worked with have been followed. I give them a number of a burner phone that I bought with cash so that the phone's untraceable. Nobody here yet.
The thing that really jumps out for me is during the interview, I was giving them examples of production problems that I was seeing in the factory. One of the gentlemen would literally finish my thoughts. And as I said, you know, and then this led to, and he would actually finish my statement.
So either the FAA did know and they didn't do anything about it, or they didn't know and it's inexcusable how they could not know.
And the part I can't get past my brain is, you know, you have 45,000 FAA employees, you have 1,600 of them in that building that we were at, and they can only assign 5 people 15 minutes away down the street at the busiest factory in the world. I mean, give me a break. I just hope that they do what they say they're going to do and go back and do a deeper investigation. And
it's going to require someone to force them to do it, I worry.
Thanks for coming. In terms of change at the FAA, is there a culture shift as a result of what happened on the MAX? Have people's attitudes changed?
One of our engineers turned in a safety report, and the manager was upset because now you've got a delay in the program, and so it can impact the program schedule, and managers retaliate. And so the people that I talked to said that they have not seen any change. There's some real problems with the organization. In all fairness, we went through 10 years of just absolutely amazing safety level. But then there was a lot of complacency, both in industry and at the agency. And Boeing has huge influence politically. A lot of money put into lobbying Congress. And it just shows the acceptance of the Boeing position on things, because the agency and Congress, they're focused on enabling industries. And I think the belief system is it's safe enough.
The wall between the FAA and the industry is a very low wall. There's a lot of back and forth movement. It really often is a revolving door. People who work for Boeing who then go into the FAA. You also see people at the FAA looking to go into Boeing. And what ends up happening is the FAA really becomes part of the Boeing team.
I was very frustrated by the FAA. They were way less cooperative than Boeing. They refer to the regulated entities as their customers. No, they're not your customers. They are a private interest that sometimes will cut corners to get a competitive edge. And sometimes those corners they cut kill people. During this investigation, we found out something which I think changed everything. After the first crash was a report that the FAA had produced about the MCAS system. That report said that unless the MCAS was modified, 15 of these planes will crash during the life of the fleet. We've never allowed anything like that into the air before in history. You don't do that. Who saw that report? How was it circulated? Why didn't they then act to ground the planes as opposed to waiting until another plane full of people crash?
After the first crash, they estimated 15 crashes in the lifespan of the plane. FAA leadership, Boeing leadership, they knew this before this plane was made, before it was put together. And they did nothing. That's what makes it so heartbreaking. When you realize, like, how preventable it was.
This is going to be a really interesting hearing. And I just got to go here.
Of the crash of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302.
There we go.
The aircraft involved in both accidents was the Boeing 737 MAX. It is hard not to conclude your team at the FAA has attempted to keep us in the dark. Administrator Dixon, I hold you responsible for this. I expect to receive an explanation today at this hearing for the failure to comply with the committee's requests.
Make some excuses.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I always appreciate the opportunity for dialogue. I will not sign off on this aircraft until all FAA technical reviews are complete. I also intend to pilot the aircraft myself before the FAA makes any ungrounding decision.
There we go.
This bravado. You got test pilots. You don't have to fly it yourself. You're talking about just tone deaf.
Senator Markey.
Boeing is now arguing in court that the FAA's certification of the 737 MAX should shield it from liability. Do you support Boeing's position, or should the victims' families be able to hold Boeing accountable?
Senator, I'm not in a position to comment on that, but I would certainly be willing to follow up with you on that question.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did Boeing lie to the FAA?
I can't say. I mean, definitely there was incomplete information and fragmented information that was provided.
That's bullshit.
Did the FAA screw up in certifying the 737 MAX?
I have concerns. I would say that there were mistakes made, yes.
Come on, Senator.
In Washington, the passive voice is a great way of avoiding responsibility. Who made the mistakes and why?
The manufacturer made mistakes, and the FAA made mistakes in its oversight of the manufacturer.
And what were the mistakes and why were they made?
The full implications of the flight control system were not understood as design changes were made.
Come on.
Has anyone at FAA been fired?
No one has been fired over this particular matter up to this point.
Has anyone been disciplined over this matter?
No, not specifically.
So, unknown somebodies made unspecified mistakes for which there had been no repercussions.
Zero accountability.
You understand, sir, you do not work for Boeing. You work for the American people.
With that, this hearing is now adjourned.
Who got fired? Nobody. Who got demoted? Nobody.
This is our government. Our government. This is our government in action. It's just ridiculous. Come on, George. Let's go for a walk. Come on. At least you don't work for the government. It's bullshit.
I think he sort of owns it and feels very, very guilty, maybe responsible a little bit for the deaths of these people, and that's very difficult to watch him because he's not.
I thought he was doing a timeline mostly of just the things that he had done, but this is everything.
I am beyond pissed. It should not be that hard to get the FAA to do their damn job. But we still have the Department of Justice investigation going on, so it's not over yet.
As part of a Department of Justice investigation, Boeing was forced to release some documents, instant messages and emails between a couple of pilots at Boeing. It's completely off script, and they're saying things Boeing would never have wanted to see the light of day, and we're reading them. You're realizing as a journalist, oh my God, readers are going to be outraged. Boeing's chief technical pilot, Mark Faulkner, saw it as his job to dissuade airlines and regulators all over the world from wanting extra training for the pilots.
This guy Faulkner, he is doing it because higher up at the company, they decided that a major program goal was not to require pilot training. This was a business competitive advantage. and was very important to Boeing.
Boeing had promised pilots who flew the old model 737 could transition to this MAX model with minimal training, 2 hours on an iPad.
Seriously, an iPad.
Boeing had written into the contract with Southwest a guarantee. You will not have to train your pilots on the simulator, and if you do, we'll pay you $1 million per airplane. That's how seriously we're taking this. And there was a chilling moment when I got in the middle of the document and I saw this exchange, and I realized that Faulkner was telling his deputy, Patrick Gustafson, that he had that day managed to dissuade Lion Air not to have simulator training for its pilots. Lion Air did actually ask for more training, and Boeing went out of its way to stop them from getting it. Mark Faulkner tells his deputy, I just Jedi mind tricked these fools. What we also learned was that MCAS was changed in a way that was going to be a real problem. And if the FAA knew about it, they were going to change the training requirements. So these two guys at that moment, under pressure from senior managers, caved and decided not to tell the FAA. The airplane, meaning the MAX, the airplane is designed by clowns who in turn are supervised by monkeys. This is bad engineering, it's bad safety, it's devastating consequences. And after the MAX wrapped, these guys were given an award by Boeing because they delivered exactly what their bosses had wanted. What's Boeing going to do to answer this mess? We don't know, but I would expect criminal charges.
The U.S. now has its first confirmed case of the deadly new coronavirus.
The Dow dropping more than 2,300 points.
Airports and airlines devastated. This airport is empty. The parking lot is empty.
Because of the COVID-19 crisis, what we have is a company that's in terrible shape business-wise.
Boeing, the #1 component in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, in a free fall at this moment.
So they really depend on the 737 MAX getting back to get cash flow coming again.
We have to help Boeing. We have to help the airline industry. It wasn't their fault. This wasn't their fault.
It has to work, or Boeing can't keep going.
Yeah. Wait. What about the... You sure? Today we're going to watch the FAA administrator fly the MAX on a test flight. This is one of the last steps, apparently, before the plane gets recertified.
Why is he touching the plane like literally just a clown in a suit?
He made a big deal saying, you know, I'm not going to approve this plane unless I fly it myself. Sitting up there, you know, what is he really going to test? Come on.
So where is the plane right now? Is that it right there? she goes. You seeing anything yet? Well, that's him.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. We're in the home stretch, but that doesn't mean that we're going to take shortcuts to get it done.
Boeing stock's up $3 right now.
Which is twice before the Dixon press conference started.
The plane for return to passenger service.
Steve, I'd like to ask you a question that actually comes from one of the families of the victims in an email this morning, and it's something that the families have been repeating. They see today's flight as a public relations stunt, a gift to Boeing.
This is not a publicity stunt. This is simply the fulfillment of a commitment, a promise that I made within my first few weeks at the FAA. The 737 aircraft, and statistically, it may be the safest airplane that's ever been built. You know, as I've said many times, safety is a journey, and it is something that we need to continue.
The FAA is supposed to be our watchdog, our guardian, and our protector. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me at all. Oof.
This is a settlement as a result of the DOJ's grand jury investigation.
Boeing avoided criminal prosecution for criminal misconduct today for giving the FAA false information about the 737 MAX.
As part of this agreement, which is, by the way, what many people on Wall Street expected, Boeing has agreed to pay more than $2.5 billion.
That fine's only a slap on the wrist when you consider the severity of the charges.
Boeing had a problem. They dealt with the problem working with the government. They together crafted this announcement that basically said, look, we're responsible, but only because we had some bad apples. And the bad apples didn't have senior management. It was these guys.
These two guys were guilty. Pilots from the internal Boeing emails, Mark Faulkner and his deputy, Patrick Gustafson. They've been thrown to the wolves here.
Faulkner does what he's told, and now he's basically being left as a scapegoat for what Boeing did.
And the DOJ actually went out of their way, and this is not normal. They explicitly say that senior management didn't do anything. All of the senior management at Boeing are off scot-free. And not only scot-free, but, you know, with their huge $1 million salaries, all intact and no threat to them at all.
Hey, on the call, can I call you back?
Yeah, just come by when you're done. It's really annoying is that Boeing is able to pay money to avoid criminal responsibility. But honestly, it's great for the case because we make the same allegations that the government now has settled with Boeing. And that is essentially Boeing defrauded the FAA. These guys, Faulkner and Gustafson, are the two technical pilots. They do what they're doing because they're under orders from above. But the guys above, the executives, who gave the order, they got away with it. And that's, frankly, goes back to this whistleblower that we've been talking about, Ed Pearson.
After the first crash, I wrote to the CEO. You need to know we got to stop and do the job properly. Right after that, I wrote to the board of directors, and it was a certified letter because I wanted to make sure that it was documented. I was pleading with them to act. And then a couple weeks later, the Ethiopian airline crashes.
Pearson comes along and he says, that's not just those two guys. I went to Muhlenberg and said there are real problems on the assembly line, manufacturing process. So you begin to develop a larger picture of a corporate attitude to put money and profit above safety. Everybody in the Boeing organization says safety first, safety first, safety first. Is that true? Is that true? Or is that a canard? Is that baloney? Right now, I like the idea of getting Pearson on paper.
Yeah. Put it this way, Boeing doesn't want him to testify, so we should we should react to that by getting him to testify.
Oh, hold on. Boeing's calling me. Hi, Bernard. How you doing? No problem. So, what did you want to tell me? No, but what? I understand. Mm-hmm. All right, Bernard. Well, thanks for the call, and I'll talk to you later. Bye. Well, we have the heads up, basically. The FAA is going to clear the MAX to fly again on Wednesday. It's good news for Boeing at a very, very low moment.
Hello.
Hey.
Did you see the news?
I was in Costco, honey. I haven't seen the news.
The FAA just cleared the Boeing MAX to fly.
Well, you knew it was gonna happen.
American has these airplanes, so American as a company is going to want to fly them. Okay, that's an Airbus 737. Here you go. Max 8, 2:30 p.m. Look at the cost. You can go at 140 for 516 on an Embraer. I can go to 230 for 181 on a Max. People looking for deals to go to Miami are gonna end up in a Max if they're not careful. That's crazy. I can just tell our PR guy about this. I don't know, I gotta tell you, I think it's gonna be real when people are at an airport lining up and being the first ones to get on a Max.
Good morning, passengers. This is the pre-boarding announcement for American Airlines Flight 718 to Miami, leaving on time. Boarding begins in 20 minutes. Thank you.
Birthdays and anniversaries tend to be really hard, so it's just making sure that instead of just being sad, to celebrate Dad, celebrate his love, celebrate his life, and yeah, and I think it's needed because The 737 MAX is going back up in the air, and that hurts a lot. So to feel some form of like victory. Thank you so much.
That's a beautiful cake.
This is the final boarding call for passengers on American Airlines Flight 718 to Miami.
I've talked to high-level people inside Boeing who feel a sense of guilt, but they don't believe they did anything deliberately wrong. The sin wasn't anything deliberate. It was going along with the system that was there and not questioning it enough. This is a very American story because it's the American corporate culture at the root of what's gone wrong. What happened within the FAA in withdrawing further and further from its direct oversight role, that was just a political move. Boeing lobbied and paid politicians and convinced them that they needed to get out of the way of industry. Boeing said, we want regulation out of the way, we'll control it, because we're efficient and we can do it ourselves.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff.
Predatory capitalism will kill itself, and it will kill people. This is a sickness that kills many good American corporations. The impact of Wall Street on the real economy of the United States of America. 40% of our economy is financed. They used to be 20%. They used to lend money to people to make things. Now they are predating on successful companies and turning them into a shell of their former selves. I want to see Boeing go back to being what it was, and they could be, again, the greatest engineering company in the world.
Didn't see the end through all the pain, but we made it through the storm, made it through the storm. Grateful for the battles that we won and the ones that we lost too. The hurdles we overcome. Safe to shore.
Ed Pearson told lawmakers pressure to produce new planes as fast as possible was undermining safety.
Boeing wasn't listening to the FAA. The only people that were doing any listening, it seemed, was Congress.
The prize is awarded to Dominic Gates, Steve Militich, Mike Baker, and Louis Cam of the Seattle Times.
Boeing has finally accepted sole liability for the fatal crash in Ethiopia.
An agreement that also paves way for compensation claims to be made under U.S. law, which provides for higher levels of compensation.
My dad always used to say you have to live full and die empty. I'm not there yet. I'm just starting my journey.
but that's the direction that I'm heading.